All right, we are here with a group of our Kefir family, and we just want to start by three of us giving a quick introduction, and then we'll get to the others, and we'll do some question answer type stuff. And my name's Tyler Price. I live in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and I just do a lot of healthy stuff, and I just get consumed and hyper focused, my wife calls it, on things. And right now, one of my hyper focuses is kefir, amongst other things. But it's been a great thing for me. But we're going to start with Roy, who's been in the group for quite a long time. But Roy, why don't you go ahead and start, introduce yourself, talk to why kefir for you.
By the way,
And
Roy is our top contributor in this group.
yeah,
He interacts the most out of all of the people.
yeah.
Much
So
to some, much to some persons.
But not everybody can like everybody. So.
yeah, that's okay, right? If you're pleasing everybody, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So, but Roy, why don't you introduce yourself and then talk to Kefir?
Where's Kiefer? I don't see him.
Their ideas, yeah. Anyway,
So I'm an 80-year-old man, um, uh, outrageously healthy for my age. I can contribute some of that to Kefir and some of it to long-term meditation. I've been meditating since 71, and I spend probably 6, 7 hours a day in the domes here in Fairfield, Iowa, meditating with a long-term program. I remember when I first started Kefir, it was 1975. I was on staff at a facility, and an older couple came in, and they were going to be attending some courses, and they asked me to babysit their Kefir grains while they were on the course. And that was the beginning of it for me. There's not much I can really say other than this. Kefir is hard to kill. And a lot of people are afraid they're going to kill their grains. Or something happens to them and they think, oh my God, they're gone now. They stink or whatever all. Or the milk is just sour. It hasn't gotten to what I expect Kefir to get to. The truth of the matter is there's a wide latitude that those grains will accept. And where's all that coming from? Anyway, so you might find that I poke pins and balloons in the Kefir group, and that's not because the balloons are bad. It's that the balloons are limiting, and so I tend to want to give them a little poke so that people don't get dogmatic about Kefir because it's so flexible. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the number of times that people have come to me and said, "Oh, I've killed my Kefir," and sometimes they throw it out, and I tell them, "Oh my goodness, you're throwing it out. Oh, it was terrible." But no, you can almost always salvage them. The only time you can't salvage them is if you got them real hot and they dissolve, because they will dissolve at high temperature. And that's about it. Roy Honeyball, check it out.
very good, Roy. Well, and I'm Tyler Price. I got Kefir, and people, we say kefir. Uh, my Russian friend says it way more rolling of letters and things like that. But the kefir, I got it by accident. I'd asked a neighbor for a sourdough start, and she gave me some kefir at the same time, and I promptly killed the sourdough start and was able to keep the kefir alive. So I will attest to what Roy said, that these things are hard to kill. And I almost attempted, because I was producing so many grains and wasn't able to keep giving them out, that I froze them, and I didn't freeze them in milk. I just put a glob of them in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer, and it sat there for 6 months. I then pulled it out of the freezer and was going to freeze dry it with my neighbor's freeze dryer. And it was just this big mass. And he's like, well, the freeze dryer can't freeze dry that the way that it is. It has to kind of be spread out. So then I took a knife and just started cutting up this big mass of kefir and spread it out over the tray, freeze dried it, and then they work still. So then reconstituted them and they still work. I'm still kind of tinkering with that, but They actually taste good. I sent some to Tracy, and he can attest to that. If you've ever eaten the snack Pirate's Booty, it tastes a lot like that. It's kind of a cheesy, crunchy flavor. But so I got it by accident, and then but the next morning it had separated, and I'm asking my neighbor, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And she's like, "Well, I don't really know." So then I got on YouTube and started doing research and figured it out, and really have loved the kefir and what it's doing for my body and all that. So just and kind of my why, my dad. So where Roy's been healthy, my dad passed at 80, and he was a real shrewd businessman, had done some great things, traveled the world, did all these things, but he was diabetic and it was self-induced, and his diet is what ultimately killed him. And he never, I mean, he had a kidney transplant, he did all these things, and I love my dad. He should still be with us. Um, but he was the example to me and my siblings of what not to do with your health. And then I just try to take it a whole nother level. So I do a lot of microgreens, sprouts. I still indulge in things that maybe aren't healthy, but I think you need to at some level, right? But more vegetables and gardening and fermentation and sprouts and different things like that, and they just make you feel great. So that's kind of my why of how I got. I mean, I got into kefir by accident, and I just love it, and it just kind of blends nicely with all the other things that I do. So, with that, I'm gonna kick it to Tracy to kind of bring this whole thing home.
Bringing it home. Well, you all know me because you see my face on a regular basis out there. I'm the guy that complains and whines at everybody. So, but I'm very happy. People think I'm discouraged by this group. I'm not. I'm very blessed to be in. I got this. I got this group as a gift. Basically, I just joined as an admin, and the gentleman who ran it had another admin, and then she disappeared, and then he disappeared, and so I was left with it. We started out years ago at about 4,000 people, I think in 2018. And as you've seen right now, I think I just added 54 people while we were sitting here. So we are sitting at around 240,000 people worldwide. It's insane. It's crazy how it's gone crazy, but it's gone crazy because people want to be healthy. My journey has been, oh man, I would say so. Originally, I have two children. I'm 56 years old, happily married. We live in Colorado Springs, and then my daughter came down with autoimmune issues, food allergies, and then we realized maybe we're doing something wrong in feeding our family. So we started reading the packages, that dangerous thing to start doing, and we realized how much of she has a nut allergy, and we found out how many things I know this is not the subject, but how many things have nuts in them that you would never imagine. Baking soda from Walmart has Brazil nuts in it. They use it as a filler. So if you don't read, you don't know. So that started a journey that transformed my backyard that I couldn't grow any grass into to a backyard homestead. We run a backyard homestead that I don't advertise on here, but I'm going to do it right now, and it's called Homegrown and Happiness. Homegrown and Happiness, Colorado Springs. You can check us out. We've got a little bit of a web presence. We have Facebook and YouTube. And in that, we've decided to do what we're doing and what we're wanting to do here. And that's teach people how to do what we do, how to live that way. So we started that. I weighed almost 300 pounds when we started this process. My initial loss was 60 pounds. But I still had high blood pressure. I started in a type 2 diabetic. And now kefir and fermented, not just kefir, but water kefir. I do kefir, milk kefir, water kefir, kombucha, and fermented foods. And all of those, by the way, are all acceptable to talk about in the group, though we mostly stay on the milk kefir side of things. So all of those have been a part of our diet as we've gone through this. This last round, I've just lost since June about 35 pounds. My blood pressure medication is gone. My type one of my type two of two one of two type 2 diabetic medications is gone, and the next one is about ready to go away within the next 2 months. And that's just been by choosing healthy things, and kombucha or kefir is a part of my diet right now, in that process. So we tell people, everybody, of course, there are people on here that want to tell you that kefir will heal anything. I wish it did, and it does sometimes heal things. It does. I mean, I think there are people that can say, "Well, this happened to me," and you see the naysayers. They come on here and go, "No, that didn't happen. You did something else." It is very possible. It just depends on what's wrong with your body. And so I believe in that natural process. It's how we live. We choose naturally. We do supplements. We don't, just like Tyler was saying, every once in a while, once in a blue moon, we'll eat something we shouldn't. But for the most part, we don't. And I feel better. I feel better when I don't do those things. Um, so now we're in a new process, and I'll just share this part of it because it's something I don't talk about in the group. My wife was just diagnosed last year with what they are calling a blood cancer. It is not cancer. It is in the grouping of that. It's called polycythemia vera. And if you ever hear anybody that says they have it, basically her bone marrow makes too many blood cells, so it clogs the system up. So she's had to have blood draws, and she's on some medication. But she's stepped up big time back into the probiotic direction, because some of the things that they want to give you destroy your body's bacteria system. So that is a big part of what she's doing, and so we fight it from that direction. She's destined for a long life, but it's just another thing that came along that reminds us why we do what we do. And this group, I love it. I love these people. I love it in here, and I even love the fact that that people fight over Kefir. It's so funny. But that's that's the brief of my journey. And there you go. I don't have all the answers, by the way. Just because I admin does not mean I'm the smartest guy in this group. That is definitely not the case.
Yeah, no, and I like the things that are being said, and we'll jump in with everybody else here. But there's not a one size fits all. It's not absolutely has to be done this way, as Roy was kind of, the dogma Kefir. It's just it's what you want it to be, right? Um, and just have fun with it, because you really can't mess it up. I mean, again, if I stuck it in a freezer for 6 months, popped it out, chopped it up with a knife, threw it in a freeze dryer, and it still works. I don't think anyone has treated their kefir grains as rudely as I did, and then ate them too. I ate some
That's
of
the thing
them.
in this group. As you participate in this group, there is this attitude of, I'm going to tell you how you have to do it, and if you don't do it that way, you are doing it 100% wrong. The
Yeah,
problem is, as I said, we have people from across Europe who've been doing this for a very long time, and I've had people who go, "That's not how I've ever done it," and it always works. So just like Roy said, sometimes you think I'm going to do something bad. For the most part, these people they do it how they do it, and people have some different methods. There are some very obscure things out there, and there's some people who are very dogmatic about how you must do things.
yeah,
But and there's some people, if you came to me and said, I want to talk to somebody that I feel would really give me solid advice, Roy would be one of them. Tyler's the other one. He's doing a lot of research on things. We have an admin that's Thomas Egbert. He owns Fusion Teas. He was one of our group sponsors for a while. Thomas knows his stuff. Thomas, he may be in here. Thomas, if you are, hello. He wanted to just tune in the first time we had one of these. But
yeah.
just because you think I'm not doing it the way somebody else does, so I must be doing something wrong, I don't buy that. There's too many people that have done it lots of different ways.
Yeah. No, and it's yeah. I always try to respond politely, and if I disagree with someone, I tend to say, well, this is how I would do it. But
Yeah.
but I can't say that people have always responded politely to me, but that's
Oh, I'm
okay.
sure not.
I know that Tracy has said, because I'll go out to a local dairy and film some stuff, and I was out there last night actually. It was our 34th wedding anniversary, but my mom, oh my gosh, my wife had a migraine, so we weren't able to go out. So I was like, well, I'm going out to this dairy with my buddy, and we went out there. He got 80 gallons of milk to make some cheese, but the raw milk thing, I know Tracy's heard from people on how that's bad. And again, it's just whether it's raw milk from a goat, a cow, or from the store, or whole milk, 1%. I guess even certain nut milks will work over time, or at levels. But it's just, I don't know. For me, it's just jump in and just play with it. But with that, let's open it up, because I know Linda has some grains in her fridge, but has made kefir in the past. Tabitha, how far have you been in the group? And it looks like we do have a question.
I just shared that to
Oh,
throw
yes,
questions out. If you have,
yeah,
you can type them
yeah,
in if you don't want
please.
to ask them.
So we don't just have to listen to mine and Tracy and Roy's rambling, because I got 9 questions from John. But what other questions? And John, maybe you can jump in too. But But Tabitha, are you making kefir currently?
Yeah, I
Okay,
have about 9 months now. Yeah.
great,
Yep.
great. Yeah.
How's your
Well,
experience? Tell us a little bit about it. Why did you start doing it, by the way?
I have been experiencing hormonal issues and
Okay.
I kind of linked it to my gut health. So that's kind of what started me. I heard about it on a podcast and it kind of sent me down a rabbit hole. And
yeah,
I'm like you, Tyler, I hyper focus on things. So it's been like my life for 9 months.
yeah,
And
Is it doing something with those issues that you've?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I can tell my gut is way better. It's completely changed that. It's changed. I tell a lot of people in the group, but some people don't believe me. It's changed my mood a lot. Because I had, a lot of irritability and stuff before, and that's changed a lot. And then the kefir itself, there's definitely a learning curve. The first couple months where I was really anxious about it for some reason. I thought I was going to kill it. I thought I was doing something wrong, and then finally I was like, I can just make more tomorrow. I can just make more tomorrow. So now it's doing great. I can't stop it from growing. I'm freezing it. I'm giving out to people, anyone that will take it around me, giving
yeah.
it away.
That's awesome.
So it's doing really, really well.
And
My son,
that's
my
the
son,
mood
my
thing
son
is a
has
big.
it. Sorry, I'm so sorry. My
Oh, you
son
please. I'm interrupting.
my son has ADHD. So that was another reason why I wanted to get his gut,
Ah,
make sure that that was covered. And he loves it. He drinks more than I do some days. So that's been a huge.
Has it helped his ADHD, do you think?
I think so. He has not. We started 9 months ago, and his meltdowns have been lessened quite a bit. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we had a gentleman, you guys saw the post probably because multiple people reported it, of a gentleman standing in a suit talking about his anxiety going away. It's a post that came out maybe about a week ago, and everybody wanted to tell me I needed to remove it. But it was a gentleman sharing that his anxiety, he started doing this and it greatly affects him. I'm like, wow, that's really, and what you're sharing, that is amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I had read an article on it, helping with depression and things of that nature. When someone asks medical stuff, I'm just dangerous, so I don't ever answer to medical questions. But I do believe that it has a place in whatever is ailing you, whether it's hormonal or ADHD or depression. I think it's worth a try, right? So,
Well, I mean, you see, if you do a lot of research on this, if you're like us, you've probably done more than just get it. If you've read about it, I mean, there's a lot of studies, and I was sharing this with Roy and Tyler a couple days ago, that there's some studies that show that this increase in autism that we have, there's a lot of different factors that play into that, but that they say that some of it could have been because of our diets, and we damage the bacteria in our stomachs. So what happens is any of the toxins that come through that would normally come through from any kinds of foods and things normally would be headed off by good bacteria, but instead it's being allowed to go on and affect others. And I have family members that have children who are autistic, and they now realize it's very possible that, I mean, you don't want to beat yourself up because hindsight's 2020, but that could have, a bad gut bacteria would have allowed things to pass through.
yeah. And kind of coming to that point, and building on what Tabitha, if you do research on the history of kefir, I think it needs to be a movie. To me, it's so fascinating. But there was this Dr. Metchnikoff that really was doing a bunch of studies, and he won a Nobel Prize. But it was at the time when uh, whatever, it was the version of COVID, right? But it was, what was it, dysentery or so, I forget. But it had killed about 4 million people globally. And his philosophy was that if we had better gut health, that people wouldn't be affected. And so he noticed certain groups of people that were drinking kefir that weren't affected. So he had 3 vials of whatever this was, and I know it. I'm old and I can't remember. Anyway, him and one of his lab guys were drinking kefir and eating yogurt and stuff like that, and another guy wasn't. And so the study was all 3 of them drank a vial of this stuff, and him and the guy that were eating yogurt and drinking kefir weren't affected, and the other guy almost died. They luckily kept him alive. But so anyway, to kind of that point, I mean, that's a little bit of an extreme study, I think, but he ended up winning a Nobel Prize from that, and ultimately kefir was able to come to Russia and now to the masses because of that. So
If you do any research on food and the food system that we eat, the way that they're genetically modifying things, there's things that they're doing to ward off bugs that it comes down, it still comes through to us.
Yeah.
You know, they've genetically modified certain strains of corn that go into everything, it seems like, that we eat, that cause the bug's stomach, when they eat that particular corn that's been genetically modified that way, their stomach to burst open. Makes you wonder what it does to us when it comes through to us. So anything we can do to benefit that beneficial bacteria in our stomachs is huge.
So I'm going to put Linda on the spot, and you don't have to answer, Linda, but I'm going to put you on the spot. She was the first person to join. We got to talk for a minute. But so you're right now restarting your journey with the kefir. What are questions that you might have, or how do you feel about it?
Well, I feel I've been on this journey since I was 27 years old, and I have 6 children. And I made homemade bread and all this stuff, that gardening and eggs and all that. And then in my old age, not having a farm anymore and stuff, I've slipped into the mire and I feel like crap.
Yeah.
So I'm wanting to climb out of that hole and start anew at 75 years old. And I would like to be here when I'm 90 or 100 in good health, not disabled or whatever. So I'm also going to start, I need somebody to generously bequeath me some water kefir grains, but I like the idea of this June, it's not a kumache, it's an all-natural honey and green tea fermentation. It's called June tea, or JUN. But at any rate, you speaking about the autism in children, I have some grandchildren, and one of the twins has autism. Does anybody know if I can get him to drink it, if it will help him in his journey? He's just now 6 years old and starting to verbalize. He's like a little animal, and I feel so bad for him, and I want to help him, but I don't want to push things that I don't know. Have any of you had any experience in that?
So I
Tabitha
have
kind of
not.
spoke a little bit towards
Yeah.
kind of.
But I'll say you can do things to it that they'll enjoy. I know they talk about not using honey, but I think if you're mixing it in, I don't know other people's opinion in the beginning. If you're mixing it and then drinking it, I think that's probably going to be okay, but I don't know other people's opinion on that. But I would find things that is it a boy or a girl?
Boy.
I would find things that he likes, blend it, and then give it to him.
Chicken nuggets is all he eats.
Chicken nuggets. Why not? I mean, I put Dr. Pepper in it. Oh no, I put root beer first, and it was like a root beer float. I mean, not exactly, but kind of like a root beer float. So try something like that. But yeah, blend it in a chicken nuggets in a blender with some kefir and see what happens. I don't know, but
Also, if he already drinks milk and he finds that the kefir is, you're talking water kefir, aren't you?
No, she's talking
either one.
Either one. Yeah.
Okay. And if you find that he feels it's too sour, you can just add a little more milk to it and soften it up and throw it in the blender, fruit and whatever not, and turn it into something that he cannot even recognize except that he likes it.
Okay.
They do say that a lot of times kids with autism, they find most, if not all, have gut issues. So I think it would certainly help with some of those. A lot of times it's just when you have gut issues, you don't absorb minerals, you can't actually process things. So that I think would help. It would be getting to the root cause, in my opinion, is mineral deficiencies and,
Well,
there's a plethora of vitamins out there too if you do a little bit of research. And again, you're only going to be able to go so far with such a young little guy there. But I mean, they talk about omega-3s and magnesium. And there are things that I take as a part of my regular regimen of things, but I'm not dealing with autism either. But there are things out there that are studies have shown that they're beneficial in helping people with. I mean, I wish there was a way that we could just tell you that it would just take away their autism. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't imagine that. I mean, that was a process when he was built.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, my nieces son is an adult man now. He is married. He is severely autistic and struggled for a long time. And now that he's reached adulthood, it's changed. And he's a great young man. And it has changed his diet too. I don't know that kefir is one of those things, but it has changed his diet now that he's married. She cooks nicer meals for him, I guess, probably than he ate as a single guy. But you know, we think, okay, this is just a bad thing. You know, these are people that can grow up and learn in adulthood how to
Sure.
function.
Yeah,
Yeah.
autism is a funky thing, and they can't zero in on it. I was autistic, by the way, very high functioning, and what seemed to take care of it for me was meditation.
Mm.
Early on, about 2000, I've been meditating since 71, but in 2011, I was part of a study for another purpose, and my EEG came out showing a very odd imbalance between the two hemispheres. And I don't know if you know much about autism, but that's essentially what autism is. It's one side of the brain does not communicate effectively with the other. Very severe autism, there's no corpus callosum. So in other words, there's no way they can communicate. But generally speaking, something happens early on in the person's life, and one part of the brain starts progressing faster than the other, and they end up essentially talking two different languages. Anyway, after that EEG, I've had, because I was on this study, I've had several EEGs, and it went away.
Mm. Yeah. Well, hopefully he'll like some kefir anyway. It'll help him health wise.
Yeah. Anything that brings about better health is going to affect everything in your body.
So
I'm curious, while we're talking about this, if you might, if I could ask, maybe a little raise of hands or whatever. How many of us do? We all do milk kefir, correct? How many do water kefir?
Well, I have
No,
Me too.
I've done
you
it,
have
but
some.
I have done water kefir, but I don't do it at this time.
yeah.
Okay. How
Yeah.
about kombucha?
No.
I've done it.
That's
in the
my
past.
next one.
Oh, I
Nice.
bet
That? Oh yeah.
not totally, yeah.
Kombucha was the first thing that I started. What about now Jun? What she was speaking of is basically kombucha. The strain is different than a kombucha strain. They look very similar, but it's been hardened off, so it basically feeds off of the sugars in honey and does not get affected by the antimicrobial, antibacterial properties of raw honey. Does anybody do that? I know she said she was thinking. How about fermented foods? Does anybody do any fermented foods? Oh yeah. So I was curious. Just curious.
Yeah.
I fermented foods. I'm starting to expand. So
Yeah. Well, anybody have a question? I'm going to hit on John's unless
yeah,
John
let's.
to ask them as well. But I think it's interesting because I joined just kind of building on what you're saying, Tracy, is that we're not just focused only on kefir, right?
I might try and change the name of the group because I really want people to be able to talk. I just as funny, and I told the guys yesterday or the other day, they reported me to me because I posted about, I think it was making fermented green beans. As we grow our own green beans, and I fermented those. Oh, they're amazing. Oh, you want to add a lot of spice to them though, but they are great. I also do my own sauerkraut. I do that regularly. That's incredibly healthy. For in the early turn of the century, doctors used to prescribe sauerkraut for gut health because it's that much better. But anyway, I got reported because I posted about beans, and I'm like, no, that's completely okay. Anything fermented foods, beverages, things like that, absolutely. Somebody's
Okay.
raised their hand. I think
Merle
Meryl.
has a question, I think.
I
Yeah.
just want to talk a bit about myself. Not that I'm so narcissistic at all, but it has not come up yet. I ferment milk, or I do milk kefir. It's part of my diet. I need it to survive. I need to eat a huge amount of fermented foods. I have had Crohn's disease
Oh wow. Okay.
for more than half my life. Okay. So more than half my life. So in the recent years, I've been very fortunate to learn how to ferment foods.
Yes.
I'm very fortunate that my neighbor is a professor of organic chemistry at one of the local
Oh,
universities.
there you go.
And she took me under her wing. She initially taught me water. Well, first of all, I have always fermented cucumbers. I have made saltwater dill pickles. My mother made them. Her mother made them. I made them. My kids made them. And then, so Shirley took me under her wing and taught me all about water kefir. And so I did that for a while. This was a couple years ago. Then she taught me about milk kefir, which I have probably enough grains to feed the entire world in my freezer now, because I make a lot of water kefir, milk kefir. I'm now I've learned how to separate the curds and the whey, and so I have cheese now.
Nice.
Yeah. My husband and I went because we have a set of Gulf Islands off the coast of British Columbia here. So in the fall, around September, October, we took a fermentation workshop from people in South Oregon, where I learned to make. I now know how to make kimchi and miso. Well, I learned how to make miso. I can work with that koji. Koji is the fermented rice from the Japanese stores. I know the proper texture of the miso before it gets pushed in. I bought some of her books. So really what I'm looking for is to expand more and more and more. What I really, really, really want to know, which I read all the time on the Kefir Facebook group, is this yogurt with this L-R-E-U-T-I-R or something, this bacteria that people are ordering from Amazon, and then they make, it's from the Supergut guy, Davies, Supergut.
The elderberry.
Yeah, so I really want to know, that's that one bacteria that I don't have in my probiotic. My probiotics that I use, they're shipped in from Quebec. I pay a fortune for them. There's about 8 strains of bacteria, of good bacteria in them. But I think it was you, Tyler, that commented on, or I actually don't know who it was. At once on one of the sites, I said something about my probiotic comes in from Quebec. I bring it in, and I put the name of it down. And somebody said, and I pay a lot of money for it. Oh my gosh! And someone piped in and said, "Wow, you pay that much, and you only have 8 strains of bacteria in there." And I don't have that L-R-E-U-T-I.
I'm interested. I'm going to have to look into that.
What,
See
No.
what is that, Tabitha? Sorry, Merle, were you commenting on that? What was that called?
Yeah, elderberry.
Yeah, that one. And lots of people buy that. I see it on the group, and then they make their own yogurt. And because I can't find that in any of the probiotics in Canada, that whatever it is, L-Reterio.
Yeah. So I'm in a yogurt group that I see that regularly too. And so when you brought it up, it's like, well, I've seen it, but I don't really know what it is. So,
Huh.
so
I don't
but that's
even-
more from yogurt. Is that right, Tabitha? Is that where that lives typically, or do you know?
Yeah, it's a specific strain. It's really dominant, so they usually put it in its own yogurt.
Right.
Yeah, there's a little bit in kefir. I've heard that there's like
I was gonna
very
say that.
small amounts.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
heard that sound like there might be some in kefir on there.
Yeah, it is one of the strains in kefir, but it's a very small amount.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I just
I
need
wonder
to
what would
look
happen if you added it to kefir. Like, could you
Yeah.
add it to kefir, or is it specifically for yogurts?
Well, I think it might kill off the other bacteria. 'Cause
Oh, okay,
it's
gotcha.
very
gotcha.
dominant bacteria.
Makes sense.
It's something about what I notice in most of the posts is that the people have a yogurt maker that you can get a specific temperature. This bacteria wants a specific temperature to grow, and that's what they do. They put it on this temp and they grow it. But what I'd really like to have is a dietitian, but I think I'm the only one that, I mean, for a dietitian that specializes simply in fermenting foods.
Yeah, that's tricky to find sometimes.
I know, and yeah.
You be your own dietitian, right? I mean,
Right.
I want to start. I bought a Kefir cookbook, and I want to start recording things and throwing that into the group too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
not
if you
for
figure that out,
anything
Merrill,
other
we would love
than
to hear that.
yeah. But so how has that affected your Crohn's disease? Because I see people commenting on that in the group, and I'm never comfortable enough to give an opinion. But what's it been like for you, Merle?
Well, actually, I'm as sick as a dog right now.
Ah,
I mean, I know I don't look sick. Everyone
yeah,
looks, wow, you look great, Merle. You know, oh yeah, I smile, say thank you, and boom, change that subject.
yeah, yeah.
I'm on an 8-week course of antibiotics right now. I finished 1 week and 2 days. Who's
Yeah.
counting? I seem to have a bacteria in my small bowel that they've not been able to identify. So since they can't identify it, I can't get the proper probiotic that will kill it. So I'm at the mercy of Western medicine.
Yeah.
So they
Oh,
put me on an 8-week course of antibiotics, which is making me cry.
right.
It's just really disturbing me to no end, these antibiotics.
Yeah.
And I try my best to stay away from Western medicine. I use a huge amount of alternative healthcare. Huge.
Well, hang in there. We're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
going to be anyway. So,
Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you, everybody.
Well, John, do you have some questions, or I can start going through yours if other people don't want to chime in?
You're welcome to go through them. Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah. So, question one, John asked about large batch versus small batch, any difference? And I'm either in a quart or 2 quart jars. Those are as big as or even the smaller down from a quart. I don't even know what that is, half a quart, whatever it is.
Fine.
Yeah, those are the jars I live in, and I don't see any difference in the end product. For me, it's just the amount of it tends to be the amount of grains that are in there, because I don't always, well, I never measure out the exactness on my grains. I just have a glob of grains in there, and then I watch them closely to make sure that they're not over fermenting. So that's my opinion. Anybody have a different
I
opinion?
have done upwards of a half gallon at one time. I will tell you that the time frame drastically changed. Like it slowed it way down, and I did the exact. I did what I would do on a small scale and multiplied that. I didn't find that it. We're usually using, I think, a quart jar. My wife she's kind of the keeper of the milk kefir right now. She does all that straining, but we get so much of it. Honestly, even just with a quart jar, it's enough for us going forward. But I have tried a half gallon. It went, but it just took much longer to get there.
Well,
And
it all boils down to the ratio of the grains to the milk. And also in the larger batches, the swirling is even more important.
Yeah.
Because it's a tendency to, I do a gallon at a time. I make for a
Oh,
local
wow.
buying club, and I also drink probably a pint a day. So
You're doing a gallon at a time,
yeah.
and how long does that gallon take to
Just depends on my mood. I'll put it up on the shelf, and if it starts getting a little too sour, I'll pop it in the refrigerator and I'll add a little extra milk, and I'll cycle it back and forth a couple times till it gets to be just what I know, because people get fussy. So I'm like I say, I deliver that to a local buying club, and that it gets a little sour for those folks, and or they're not going to drink it. So I make it a little thick and milky, which is a trick. Uh,
Yeah.
the trick comes from the refrigerator, because the ones that make kefir, they work better at lower temperatures. So
mhm.
you can get it thicker from the kefir, and goat milk is notoriously thin kefir. So I can get it pretty thick that way, and sweet enough, just naturally sweet without adding sweetener. But the trick is just a ratio,
Yeah.
and then
And you stir it or swirl it around in that
yeah,
process time, quite often, every
Oh
day, a
yeah,
few times a day.
oh yeah, several times, yeah.
that's
Yep.
right.
And
Yeah.
that's one of John's questions is why stirring? And so I typically will take my bottle and just go like that and set it down every now and then, but I'll do it probably a couple times in a day. But why don't you speak to that, Roy? Why is that important?
To feed the little milk sheep.
So it just kind of mixes it up
Well,
because
Because
if you
otherwise they cluster, and
Yep.
they get, they make all the curds, and then you got a lot of milk
Yeah.
hanging around. especially in the larger batches. You got a smaller batch and, you're pretty much, it doesn't take quite so much, but if you want to have a consistent, um, thickness and you want to keep your milk sheep happy, just give it a little swirl once in
I
a
think
while.
I have read some, if you do some historical reading in Caucasus Mountains, using goat skin or goat stomach bags that they used to hang them often. I read somewhere where they would hang them in the doorways
Yep.
because then when they would go by, they would bump into them, and which would give them a little bit of a stir. So, when you look at that process, they didn't want to think about going and shaking it up. They'd just go by and bang into it, give it a good shake, and there you go.
It was also like a neighborly thing. When somebody visited, they could give the bag a little lift,
Yeah.
And then kind of building on that, he has a fermentation timeline of events, including pH difference. So my belief is that the longer it goes, the more acidic, and so that would mean a lower pH. So that again comes back to something Roy says is just kind of his mood, because if you're trying to make, who was it that was making cheese? Was that you, Tabitha, or was that you, Merle?
Merle said she did. Yeah.
So for me, if I'm making like a sour cream-esque type, so I want a thicker product, I let it go longer to where, for me, the whey is always on the bottom and the curds are on top. I don't know if other people have different experience, but
Big change.
yeah, and because I have had it, I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
if I'm changing the type of milk, it really gets messy for a minute, but the pH will get lower as it's more acidic. But the factors in that are your milk, your temperature. I mean, there's other factors. It's not just a one size fits all. That's why we're kind of hitting back to this, hey, don't buy into the dogma of kefir or anything for that matter, because there's not just one way to do it. But
It's also creating
yeah,
it to the place where you're going to consume it. It was
yeah.
like Roy, and we were talking about that, like with prebiotics, eating it's what are you gonna do? My kids, when I make kombucha, they like it so tart, it's almost like vinegar. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't go that far. So I have to make two batches when I do kombucha, for one for them when they were smaller, and one for me. So same thing with milk kefir. I mean, my wife just made some. She goes, it's not quite as tart as you like it. I like it tart. So it's wherever what's gonna be the place where you're gonna say, I like it this way, and then you're gonna consume it. The more you consume, the better it is. So.
Yeah, because for me, I just eyeball it and I know what I like it to look like, unless again, I'm trying to get a different product. And that's when I process it. And sometimes that's within a little better than 12 hours. And sometimes that's within 36 hours because, where we're going into winter here, the temperature outside fluctuates and my furnace is trying to keep up. And so that there's a fluctuation in temperature, which again is going to be a factor in that as well.
I
So
have a question about cheese. I have never tried
never made
to
it.
make cheese. Is the cheese that you guys make, is it a very
I got-
soft cheese? Can it be aged to be harder?
I got
Well,
a joke. I love y'all.
Oh, thanks, Roy.
Roy,
Appreciate you,
thanks for
brother.
joining, man.
Yep.
Blessed.
We'll talk to you soon.
Meryl, what's yours? What do
well,
you
what I do is I purposely make the kefir so that it will separate the whey
Yes.
and the milk. So then I'm left with a jar of kefir and a jar of whey. I separate them.
Mhm.
And so I take the milk kefir and I put it in a very fine mesh cloth bag and I hang it. And so that the rest of the whey
Comes out.
that's in there will drip down. It can take as long as two days, maybe 3.
get the grains out of that, or do they just
No,
stay?
I remove the grains
Okay,
before.
that must be tricky to get out of there. Is it tricky to get out when it gets that far?
Well, no. First, let me start over again. I purposely make
Yes.
the kefir so that the whey and the milk have separated. There's
Right.
two
Yes.
layers. So then I take the whey and I put it in a jar and I'm left with the milk and the grains.
Correct.
So then I take the grains away. I
Okay.
separate so then I'm left with quite a thick jar of kefir milk.
Yes.
So then I put that in a fine mesh cloth bag. And I have a large container, and I put I put a chopstick through it and I twist the bag around so that the ends of the
Yeah.
are there. And then I put it out in the garage where it's cold. I have a counter out there and I put a cloth over it and I kind of forget about it for a day or 2 or 3. And I come back and I look at it, and when it's you'll feel it. You'll feel you'll see the liquid on the bottom of the, and you'll open up the bag and you'll see that it's clinging to the sides. I literally just take the bag and flip it over and plop this ball of, it's like cream cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the consistency of cream cheese. You know what? Honestly, having lived with bowel disease for more than half my life, food is not my friend. You know, I know there's all of these things on our Facebook site about, oh, add this and try that. And, you know, I'm not interested really in food much anymore. I just need the kefir.
You need it to live. So.
Yeah, that's right. So look, at the most I do is take dried herbs and shake it over the cheese. Then I mix it around. Then I put it in a container, in a glass. I like a glass container with a clip seal, and I put it in the fridge so what do I do with it when I'm making a sandwich?
Yeah.
You know, instead of mayonnaise, instead of whatever, it's a spread on the bread.
There you go. Nice.
You could,
you know, like if I'm out in the world for the day, look, I'm not fond of restaurants. The only thing I love to eat is my own food. So the more opportunity I have to take, you know, I don't always want to take a jar of kefir with me in the car, but I'll take a sandwich with a big blob of this cheese kefir, some tofu slices, a little bit of mustard, some grain-free bread, and I've got a healthy lunch for my gut. Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I was curious if somebody, and again, maybe that's, so I completely understand where you're at. I wonder if somebody has, and I think I've seen it, where somebody has done something to make it harder, a harder cheese. And I don't know if that does something to or damages. I don't know. I've not been a cheesemaker. I've made chev from goats.
Yeah.
I've done chev. That's it. As far as I've gone, that's not even really cheese. But so I'm interested in that. It doesn't sound like you would go that direction, but I wonder if there's.
No, I noticed there was, I don't know if it was our group or another group. Get confused with, I don't know what I punch on that Facebook, but there was somebody who had a post of, wow, her cheeses, she had them all wrapped in, you know, and they were wrapped and they looked hard and like they had aged and all. And I went, whoa, I don't think mine are going to be hanging around long enough to age them. Or I just make them and eat them. That's it.
Good. Yeah, I'm kind of on with Tyler. I'm kind of the mad scientist thing where it's like, I know that if I make it like you make it, I'll enjoy it, and then I'm going to be going, okay, what can I go further with this? And I'm just curious. But that's what you said. It sounds like I would probably flavor it more, which doesn't sound like your desire or joy to do so. But that sounds actually very good. I got to try that.
Yeah.
I've done some sour cream. Pancakes and waffles are about as far out, but I know at that point we've killed pretty much everything out of it. But they do taste fabulous. So, okay. So when whey is drained, so we're going to build a little bit off what Merle was talking about. The question is, when whey is drained off, it seems harder to remove the kefir grains. And for me, I just always dump it in. And I know this is controversial because people always give me a hard time. I have a metal strainer. I just dump the whole thing in and I just keep swishing it around until everything processes.
That's right.
So then my grains are my whey and my kefir are my whey and my curds all mixed together. So are you trying to separate them specifically for a reason, John? Because when it gets to separation, it does tend to be when I'm there, I dump it all in, and that whey is going to go through quickly, and that kefir for the most part just stays right on top. So
yeah, sure. I was just trying to make like a yogurt type kefir. So I was trying to separate the whey off, but it was harder for me to get rid of my grains at that point. So I was just wondering if we could maybe do it for 12 or 12 hours, get the grains out, and then continue to ferment after that? Or will it not ferment without the grains in it?
Well, I think Merrill talked about that. I think the process that she does would, to get the whey out for her purpose, would leave you with the whey.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it mixed back in some, you could do that and get what you could off of it, and then put it in a mesh bag and let it sit, and it's gonna drain off that way.
Yeah.
Well, the whey is lighter than the milk,
Yeah.
so that when the whey and the milk have separated, you just simply have to take your jar and pour it, and the whey will come out first
Oh, okay.
because it's lighter than the kefir milk.
Yeah.
I actually make cheese as well. I just stir it back up. I let it go far so that it completely
Oh.
separates. I just stir it back up
With
and
the
then
whey in it.
with the whey, I stir all of it because yeah, it's hard to get the grains out of the fatty,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
milky part. So I stir
So
it
you
back
leave the
up.
grains in it.
No,
Oh,
I stir it back up and then I strain it
gotcha.
like I normally would.
And then
And
do you do something to get the whey to come out of it so that you have with your cheese, or
I
do you
just-
just
I just pour it into a mesh. Well, mine's like a cheesecloth. I
Yeah.
pour it to a cheesecloth.
Yeah.
It might take an extra, hour or two. I leave it on the counter to start, and then I put it in my fridge. And I have one in there. It's been in there for probably 2 or 3 days, and it got like almost like feta cheese the last time. It
Oh.
was really crumbly and delicious. It's really good with a blueberry compote. That's really good.
So you're mixing other stuff in. That's what I was like, oh, you could put like garlic or onion or fruit
Yeah.
or anything in
Yeah.
this thing. Yeah. Okay. Does my kefir last long as the store bought in the fridge? I don't know the answer to how long it lasts because I drink it too quickly, I think, but
Here's
I
my
don't know.
feeling about store bought, and I get asked this question on the group a lot. Everybody, I mean, there's some people you've seen lately. Well, the stuff they sell at Costco is as good as you can make at home, and I'm like, bull
Yeah.
crap. That's just
Yeah.
not. That's just not going to be the same. And here's why. I say this with kombucha when I teach classes on kombucha. I say go get a bottle of, I don't know from where you're at, but in the United States, GT's is like #1 brand of kombucha. I say go buy a bottle of GT's. And drink it, and then get another bottle and save it in your fridge. If no matter when you drink it, it always tastes the same.
Yeah.
And if I make it at home, it does not always taste the same.
That's right.
So they do something to it to be able to accomplish that. And I think Roy was talking about that consistency of flavor, so that I don't drink it one time and go, I like this, and drink it again. So the same thing would be true with milk kefir. Part of it is, and I was corrected on this recently in a post. I did not know that you can buy in a store anywhere, especially California, raw milk. I'm blown away. We cannot buy that in Colorado. It's against the law. Well, you can. You just have to figure out a way around it. But that being said, whatever they have that is a milk product in our stores is pasteurized.
Yeah.
So you're drinking kefir and they say, well, it's good for you. Well, I don't know that it really is that great of a thing because they've pasteurized it. They've killed everything in it. So to say, that store bought, it probably has some preservatives in it. I have not read a label lately, but I got to believe that it does.
And building on that a little bit, Tracy, back when the kefir was taken out of the Caucasus Mountains and into the Moscow dairy, they were using kefir grains to make kefir. Typically, the kefir companies are using cultures made in a lab. And so it's not saying that that's bad. It's just saying that it's not the same because the amount of bacteria and yeast levels are not as good as
that's where we get into this discussion, and that's where Roy brought that up because I was not really familiar. If you go to my local, we shop at Natural Grocers a lot because it's close to us. It's a Vitamin Cottage product. I don't know if you have it around you, but they sell a lot of really good products. And I walked past the aisle the other day, and by golly, they've got kombucha scobies. I felt it. There's a kombucha SCOBY in there. I looked, and they have milk kefir, but it's powder. It's a culture. It is not the kefir grains. And you've seen it on here. People go, well, I bought it, and I made kefir, but it doesn't taste the same as what I bought in the store. Well, that's a given. And how often am I going to be able to use this? And there is a time frame. Now, Roy said that there's some things you can do to extend that time, but it's not the same thing. And I wondered, what was it? And Roy, I think if you remember, Tyler, didn't he say it's something that's being created. Like they're
Right.
putting those bacteria together. Okay, this is kefir-esque, but it's not.
And that was the big push back in the early 1900s to get kefir grains because they couldn't replicate it. Even though they knew the strains, they could not replicate they could not make kefir grains. They have to come from kefir grains.
Yeah.
So yeah, the powders that are out there, it's going to give a ferment, but it's a very constant product, which is probably good because my kefir goes up and down depending on different variables of temperature and time and milk. But it's made in a lab and it's the right stuff, but if someone buys those powders, they can drink some, put fresh milk in, and it'll culture again, but it's like limited. I think it may be a week long period of time.
So I would think that the stuff you buy in the store, I've been told that that there are people, I mean, back in the day, kefir would not be kept in a refrigerator when it was made. It would be kept somewhere in a skin. It would be kept out on the counter. It's like, I wonder, how long could I keep my kefir out, keep drinking it, keep adding milk, and would it stay without anything happening to it? I don't know. I think it would probably go quite a long time.
Yeah, and I did reach out to the owner or one of the owners of Lifeway. She was really nice to respond back, but anyway, I wanted to do like an interview type thing with her and put it into the group. But again, as I did more research on it, they're creating a great product, $200 million a year company, cool history, all those things. But their family was one of the big reasons why Kefir even.
Sure,
Kefir
they've really helped the push for it. Just, again, I want to say, find somebody that's got it, get it. I mean, Tyler's even working hard to figure out some processes, and so is Thomas. Thomas Egbert just bought his own freeze dryer. If you're on here, Thomas, he's playing around with that idea because he only ships for the United States and Canada and wants to try and make it available to send to countries. I mean, we have people that. Somebody was from the Canary Islands the other day. I got crap for posting something about that. But there's from the Canary Islands, and they're trying to find it. They can't find anything near them. But the best thing that you can do is find somebody that has that culture and get it, not buy the stuff. I mean, there's stores you can buy it from, but the stuff that you get, the culture powder, I would never recommend that. I would never. I think people are getting a false idea of what kefir is when they buy that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Another great question here is there a way to increase bacteria and decrease the yeast? I have my opinion on that, but I've been talking way too much. Tabitha or Tracy or anybody else have an opinion on that?
I talk more than you do. I don't know. I've never had that question before because it's all beneficial, but I also get that there's some concerns on the yeast part of thing. I don't know. That's a good question.
I think it has to do, and I read something that and how your bottle is sealed. So are you using a cloth over the top? Or are you using a lid? So if you want more of one, then you do one or the other, but you're still I think the quantity of bacteria or yeast goes up when you do it one way over the other, but you're still getting bacteria and yeast.
Anaerobic versus aerobic. So,
but it does lend itself if you have a cloth, which isn't, I'm not saying this is bad, and it's not, the probability isn't high, but you can get cross-contamination from
bacteria. Had it happen. Put my cultures all next to each other on top of my refrigerator, and all of a sudden something started forming in jars that wasn't in the jar. I mean, I had a SCOBY form on top of something. I'm like, that's not what's in this jar. So you can. So I have them separate areas of the kitchen now. So, but yeah, that's interesting about the yeast. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's my opinion on it, John, and I'll try and figure out what one does better or what one causes higher levels, but I use a lid on mine. I screw it on and that's what I use. So different methods of preserving or freezing grains for future use. I mean, I just stuck them in a bag without any milk in a big glob, threw it in a freezer, and they worked. But I don't think that's the best method. I didn't know what I was doing. So anybody have an opinion on saving and freezing grains?
That's how I do mine.
You put milk in with it, Tabitha?
No, I put in a baggie, and everyone that I've given it to says that they thaw out very nicely. And so
again, I cut mine up to be able to fit on a freeze dryer pan. So So I think they're pretty durable things that
I
are.
I would
Yeah.
say this is something I've experienced, and I don't know about milk kefir, but I do know with water kefir. Because so water kefir is one of my biggest. That's one of the hottest items around here because I love water kefir. Probably out of all the probiotics, I love water kefir the most because I used to be a soda drinker, and you can make water kefir into any flavor that you'd ever want, savory and sweet. I have guys that work construction sites who fell in love with it and were passing it around the construction site and getting their guys involved in drinking this stuff. So I love that. But I would keep my extras in the refrigerator in water kefir hotels, if you will, large amounts, half gallon at a time. Over time, they started to get affected where they just kind of went into hibernation and didn't want to come out. So you want to be careful about that. Do some rotation. I mean, the one thing about we know about the grains is you can eat them. Some people, especially the water kefir grains, they'll throw them on a salad, get them mixed in with a salad, and just eat them. You can put them in your garden. So that's something that you can do to rotate them through, so you're not always keeping them in the fridge. Because I think if you did that for too long, maybe you would damage it.
Yeah. And kind of even building on that, the next question is how much does temperature matter, and is there a difference in low and high temp fermentation in bacteria and yeast? I mean, temperature, you can get too hot, and I always kind of post into the group, if you're somewhere between 65 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Celsius is, I think, 20 and 25, I forget, but once you start to go over in temperature, and Roy kind of hit on that, you'll start killing your grains off and getting something weird. I've never done a cold ferment, so anybody want to speak to that? Because I see people that say that's the better way to go.
We'll keep
like
the
product.
sourness stays down.
Okay.
So it does seem like it comes out, but then that always makes me wonder, did I get a full product or not? Because
Yeah.
I wonder about that. I
Yeah.
will tell you that my wife, we do start seed starting. We do a lot of growing. We have a greenhouse and everything. And she tried using, because our house gets kind of chilly at night. We turn it down to between 60 and 65 at night. We like it that way. So she was using her heat mats that she used for seed starting, which I'm not sure what that temperature is at. It's just a constant. But when she started doing that, she noticed that slowly over time, the production started to slow down. So we took them away from that, put them back up on top of the fridge where it's got, based off of the heat of the fridge and around the fridge. But now they're back to doing well. So even just an increase, for us, that affected things.
How do you do yours, Tabitha? Is it cold or room temperature?
Mine's room temperature. It stays about during the day. It's about 72.
Yeah.
We put down to about 68 at night. But when the season changed, they stopped like growing, and it had a really weird product for a couple
Yeah.
weeks, and then all of a sudden it just went back to normal. So it definitely in the summer sometimes I'd have my windows open and get to 80 degrees. It would separate so fast, and it
Yeah.
was thin and sour. But
Yeah. So, but you keep coming back to bacteria and yeast in your questions, John. So just curious, is there one that you want over the other? Because the yeast definitely tastes yeasty, for lack of a better term, which I don't mind. But yeah, anyway, what are you looking for?
Well, what I was after was the bacteria. I just have always heard that the bacteria was the best part of it for you. So friendly bacteria is what we're after in most of these fermentations. So that's where I was going with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll do some research and throw it back into the group too. Not like I know it all. I just go and find it, and yeah, but yeah. If I pull my grains out after 12 hours with the kefir, still continue to ferment, I think it still continues to do something.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so I would say yes to the fermentation, because like if I do a second fermentation or adding fruit into it and then putting that into my fridge, that definitely does something to the flavor at the very beginning versus when I finish is slightly different, I think. So can this be done to remove the whey and not have problems removing my grains? So how are you removing your grains currently, John?
So I'm doing it probably like you, only I have a plastic strainer.
Yeah.
I bought it on Amazon, and I just, play with it and get it through into a bowl. actually a large Pyrex,
Yeah.
and then pour it into a glass bottle and put it in the refrigerator. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
'Cause for me, sometimes I shake mine up before I drink it because it tends to be thicker early on, and then as I get to the end, it tends to be a little more of the way in the bottom. But anybody else with that? But anyway, all right. Well, Linda, are you inspired to get those grains into some milk and get back on your kefir journey that you did so many years ago?
Yes, and I want to get some water kefir grains too, and do
Right.
those, and then build. I've been doing fermented vegetables like the kraut. I like the kraut that's not processed, that's just in the refrigerator, and I do the dill pickles.
Yeah.
And because I get leg cramps, the dill pickle juice is wonderful
Oh,
for
nice.
stopping that.
See, and my family thinks I'm weird because I love drinking the pickle juice and
Yeah.
Famous Dave's pickle, the hot pickle
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
that is like gold to me. That's the
I
pickle.
don't get Famous Dave's. Only ones that I've found that are fermented is Bubby's,
Yeah,
and you can't hardly find them anymore.
yeah.
I
Merle has a
I
comment.
drink all the liquid in any of the fermented
Yeah.
products that I buy. I drink it. The magnesium is fabulous for
Yeah.
your body, for your electrolytes, especially if your legs are cramping at night in the
Right.
middle of the night or something like that.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I keep all of my fermentation liquids, and like for instance, I even make this fabulous dip where I take raw cashews and I soak them overnight in water. So the next day they're plump and soft.
Mhm.
And I whiz them up in the machine. And then I add dill pickle juice.
Yeah.
And so when I first do it, it's rather soupy and there's nothing interesting about it. But after a day in the fridge, it's thickened right up. And it, I use it as a dip. I serve it to guests and
Oh, that sounds
you know,
great.
Nice.
the sauerkraut juice. You know that the sauerkraut juice is really, really, really high in vitamin C, and I had no idea. When just a couple weeks ago, I was sitting at a table with some people, and this woman pipes up and starts saying all of this about vitamin C and sauerkraut, and I looked at her, and I said, "Well, I took an advanced fermentation course." And I never once did they talk about, I don't know. And I was really like, anyway, she came home. Oh, I apologized to her profusely. I didn't know. Like, all of us, what makes cabbage that you put in a saltwater brine high in vitamin C? Like, plain cabbage is not high in vitamin C, but what, you put salt and water with it and all of a sudden, boom, now it's high.
Amazing what happens in the fermentation process, isn't it?
I guess so.
Yeah.
It's got to be, but I was so embarrassed, really, humiliated and embarrassed. Yeah.
That's why I'm always kind in my comments because I'm not
Yeah.
always right.
Yeah, I learned
That's
from
good. You apologize though. That's
Oh,
good.
I had to. It was humiliating the way I sort of looked at her and went, well, I've been to an advanced
Yeah.
fermentation course.
And I love sauerkraut on a greasy hot dog. Oh man, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I'll tell
Instead
you
of
what, making it
using
yourself,
chemical.
it's really, when I first did it, my wife was like, "Oh, great, here goes another thing he's gonna make,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it is so good. I'm serious. I've bought some actual fermented sauerkraut in the store we would go to. It's expensive for I don't know, a pint or more. It's probably like $8 for this stuff, and I'm like, I can make a half a gallon of it. So easy. It is so easy to make.
Yeah.
And my wife does not like the smell. She's like, eat it in the kitchen. Do not bring it in the living room. And so I'm okay, fine. But it is so good and it's good for you. And I'm on my eating process. It's actually very filling. So if you want a snack and you can just go grab a a half a cup of that, it's really good. I love it. So
Yeah.
Well,
I've learned to love it.
yeah.
Well, my goal is to get off of sugar. Sugar is my enemy, and I found that fermented vegetables, and I'm hoping the kefir, water kefir, and milk kefir will keep me away from the sugar so I can completely get off of it because that is like poison.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we definitely have gone over the hour we were anticipating. I want
Yeah.
to just ask if Teresa Wang would like to ask any sort of question, please do so. And then someone just joined us, and then
Diana.
Diane Rowe.
Diane Rowe.
Diane, yeah, if you guys have, either of you have any questions, just take yourself off mute. And if you don't, then, and Diana just barely joined and now we're leaving her.
Gonna be
Oh,
up for recording.
apologize.
Tabitha, I am very interested. You talked about hormonal issues. I have a daughter who has, and maybe not the same thing, and don't need you to go into detail on that, but she has hormonally triggered seizures. So she was pregnant with my grandson, and she, even before that, she had absence seizures, which grew and grew and grew to a point where she couldn't even drive anymore. She couldn't do anything. They would make her disappear for just a minute or so, and they fought everything. She did everything holistic that she could. The unfortunate part was the only thing that she could do, and it worked for then, but she wants to do something different going forward, is she went back onto the pill. And when she did, it regulated her hormones, and she stopped having seizures completely for over a year, and then she got pregnant again, but she had a little girl this time, so less testosterone in her body, I guess. So they're watching it, but she wants to get, as soon as she gets to a certain point with my granddaughter, she wants to start on that to see if that will help in balancing hormonal issues. She's done a lot of research and found that it can do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think it has a lot to do with like I said before, minerals and absorption and all of that.
Yep.
It's getting your gut right. That's one of the bases.
Well, good. Well, Teresa or Diane, if you have anything you'd like to say, take yourself off mute. And otherwise, me and Tracy talked a lot. Good thing.
I do
And I
that.
think, and I'm the dumbest guy in the room. So there you go. But if anybody has any parting words, or if either of
And
those two,
if there's anything for the group that you want to say, I get a lot of input, work my butt off to try and keep it as clean as possible. But if there's anything you have to say, please feel free. You're very kind people. I will receive anything you have to say.
and I'll,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Guys,
Thank you.
thank you. And we look, me and Tracy are trying to figure this out, but, and we'd love anything that, feedback wise that you'd like to see. Okay, Teresa, we're seeing your beautiful face now. And do you have any questions or anything you'd like to say?
I just want to say thank you. Sorry, I
Oh.
have to mute myself
Oh,
because I'm in another meeting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do the water keeper too.
Mhm.
And will you send the recording to us?
Yeah, I'll send the recordings and then I'll throw it into the group as well.
That's great.
And
Thank you.
Linda
I'm looking
said-
forward about it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining everybody and appreciate your
Thank
input.
you. Thank you.
Look for
And
more
I know
stuff.
that Tyler he's not shared it, but he does have
Oh,
big
yeah.
aspirations going forward. And potentially we're going to try and see if we can find some larger names to have in this group. Gonna play around with some people that we might invite in that you might all know, maybe public figures. So
Yeah, my goal, I'm just gonna share it because you have to put it out there. I want to get JFK Jr. on here to share us his. I mean, I don't know the guy, so other than he seems like he'd come join us, right? So anyway, that's the big goal I have. So now you all hold me accountable to that. 'Cause
and he also wants to start. You may see more of Tyler. Tyler and I have been talking for a time. If you've been around for a while, you know that we did have a sponsor for a time. That was Fusion Teas with Thomas Egbert. Tom's still in here. He's one of our group experts. He's very good. He sells all those cultures. If anybody ever needs something and they don't feel comfortable getting it from their neighbor or whatever, buying it from Thomas. I bought my milk kefir grains from Thomas. They are by far the best milk kefir grains I have ever had in my entire time of making this. I also bought a SCOBY for him because I got mold on my SCOBYs, and so I got rid of them, and he replaced it. That SCOBY's going like crazy, so he puts out a good product. But he did sponsor the group for a little bit. Tyler may be coming in. We may be doing some things together. He wants to be able to put together something, a tool to be able to help all of these people, because you'd be surprised. You guys are all doing something, but we're having a mass amount of people coming in lately who are, like I heard, I think Linda say, kind of allude to, I'm afraid, or I was afraid to start. And they're afraid to start. So they're in the group, they're here, they're listening, they're watching everything, but they're afraid to do anything, and we want to be able to break down that wall and be able to help them. And that's Tyler's heart for that. So you'll see more and more of him when it comes to those things. But that's kind of something we want to do. Roy as well. I'll just say it. Roy ticks some people off in the group. You'll see every once in a while people get mad at Roy, but Roy is truly his passion and his heart is to come alongside people and help them out. He sends a plethora of information. He asks for your personal contact information, which everybody thinks he's a scammer, and he's not. I've talked to him for the last year. But there are people out there that really, really, really want to help. Tyler's one of them. So these are people that you can come to. And I know with Tyler, and he'll give me an amen on this, is that if you say something to him, you ask a question, and he doesn't have the answer, he's going to find the answer, and he's going to make that available to you. So that's what we're that's the direction we're moving. So you're going to see more and more of our faces. You see mine too much anyways.
Well, super appreciate everybody. Sorry, I'm going to end on, I do have a disorder I found out because I'll purposefully say things wrong in my videos, like Kefir, that upsets someone. And then the Mexican spice, I called it tangent or something like that. That upset some people. And then I found out that I'm borderline psychotic because I purposefully do things to get a rise out of people, and that's a disorder.
Oh,
so I'm going to eliminate that.
And you don't know how many times you got reported when you had pictures in the video of you and your grandchildren going to the farm to get raw milk. Oh my gosh, raw milk
that makes me want to do it more.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, raw milk there's been a battle going on in this group, and people that believe that raw milk's going to kill you if you drink it. And, and there's a whole discussion about that maybe we can have somebody that's professional in the industry to come in here and talk about that. But there's a whole bunch of people out there that are trying to scare the crap out of everybody. And it's just wrong. So so Tyler gets reported all the time. So
good. That means I'm doing something right. So, well, thank you again, and we'll quit recording now, and I'll get that out to people and as well as into the group. But I appreciate everybody's time on a Saturday.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Thank you.